decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The band is back together for the first time.
Finally.
I am your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk is in the top right. Ezra Ginsburg's in the bottom middle.
Where's your Mardi Gras mask, Drew?
Well, hang on. It's right here if you want me to put it on.
No. Don't bring it
sure?
out. No.
You don't want to see it again after last night's post-game show? I think that once was enough for everybody. I strongly suspect.
Before we get started here, I don't think I've ever got as many texts like Michael Remus, formerly a member of Legal
Winnipeg
Curve,
Sports Talk,
emails. I was getting tweets at me like, what's going on? And my only response was, it's the Drew Mindell experience.
That's exactly right. That's the only correct answer. If you missed what we're talking about, last night's post-game show was a solo affair for yours truly. And that mask I just showed off, I may have worn through a large chunk of that. So you can check it out on our YouTube page. You can also check it out, of course, in podcast. But you don't quite get the same je ne sais quoi on the podcast as you don't get to see me wearing the mask. So if you want to check that out after this program, then you can go ahead and do that. Spend your Saturday with Illegal Curve. Dave M., good to see you. Thank you, Kitty Pup, saying I'm creepy AF. I appreciate that. Not the first time I've heard that, to be perfectly honest.
The name Kitty Pup is a little bit creepy to be honest with you as well, Kitty Pup. So
maybe they have both a cat and a dog.
How are things in your life, Dave?
I think what happened was Drew Mindell saw the Dave Minuk experience to close out last week's show, and he got a little taste for the solo life. When Sean Reynolds had to go to get Kenny and Rennie started, I did a little bit of a solo project, Dave Minuk project, if you will. It was an extended Minuk Moose minute. Sean had to go. I wasn't quite ready because, of course, we had to discuss, by we I mean myself in the plural, to discuss the moose clinching and all that good stuff. So I gave Drew a little bit of a taste. I was like, solo show. It was kind of fun. And next thing I know, I kept messaging Drew throughout the week. I'm like, well, Ez and we're co-faxing it. We're doing setters, with our families. So what's going on with you, Drew? And he was being a little cagey. And I thought to myself, I think we're about to get a Drew Mindell experience because he wasn't giving me anything. I was like, who are you going to get? Are you going to get this person? You get this person? Nothing. I should have realized we were about to get the Drew Mindell experience.
Well, if you guys go remember, and for those who used to listen to us on TSN 1290, when we had the midweek show, which was then, it became the NHL This Week show. It was Tuesday nights or Wednesday nights on TSN 1290. This is going back a few years, but Drew did a few solo shows, and I remember tuning in a few times, and I'm like, what is going on? This is my worst nightmare. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, we know, how tough it is, sometimes to fill airtime. But for Drew, he makes it look easy.
Anybody who knows me knows that rambling incoherently is basically my middle name. Let's get into the Winnipeg Jets. I have to say a happy Passover to you both. Happy Passover to anybody in our audience who's celebrating. Happy Easter to everybody who's celebrating this weekend as well. It's a holiday weekend among all sorts of different folks, so we hope everyone's enjoying it, spending some quality time with family and friends and whatever traditions you do. Not to quote Olaf in Frozen in that Frozen short, but your holiday traditions, whatever they might be, I hope that you're enjoying them on this Saturday morning.
Drew, did you find the Afikomen?
I didn't. The kids did find the Afikomen, though, so they were taken care of. And then there's always the scramble. I don't know about you guys, but I never carry cash on me. So, usually, the kids get a little bit of a gift or a little bit of a cash payment for finding the Afikomen. It's a Passover thing. You can look it up, folks. I'm like, okay, Laura, do you have any money? Laura's like, I don't have any money. I'm like, okay, let's go see what I have. I think I scrambled. I had a couple American dollars left over from my trip to New Orleans. Here you go, kids. This is worth like $1.40. Go nuts. Have yourselves a good time. I'll tell you what wasn't worth $1.40 though, guys, and that was the Winnipeg Jets performance last night.
There's that segue. There's that classic Mindell segue right there.
See that one right there, boys? That's why you can do the Drew Mindell experience when you got professionalism like that available to you. Anyways, last night in Sunrise, it was 6-1 for the Florida Panthers over the Winnipeg Jets, and somehow a 6-1 score flattered the Jets. I mean, it was as bad of a beatdown as we've seen in a long while for this Winnipeg Jets team. They came out flat from the beginning. They were down 2-0 within the first 5 minutes of the game. It could have been 4-0 after 20 minutes, if not for the 2 disallowed goals. We know that this season is rapidly coming to an end. Mercifully, some people would say coming to an end. 2 weeks and 1 day from now will be that riveting season finale against the Kraken that is still on the schedule for reasons I will never quite be able to understand. Financial is the answer, so they don't have to pay a refund to anybody who bought tickets to that game. Last night, you had to feel as though it was rock bottom, and Nikolai Ehlers came out and after the game was quite honest in his assessment. And, he just said, look, basically our fundamentals aren't good enough. We don't have fundamentals almost. Not only that they're not good enough, but we often don't have them. And then we abandon them very quickly. It's just been one game after another like this all year. And frankly, anybody who looks at this team and thinks that they're more than their record is fooling themselves, I would say, at this point in time. And that's mainly directed into the True North offices, because there's nobody outside of True North offices who might think that this team is better than they actually are and better than their record has shown for the course of this season.
Well, I agree with you. And guys, you could go back and we've done that quite a bit on this show and the post-game shows, and we could go over and Mikey McIntyre wrote about it in Wednesday's free press or Thursday's free press. Talking about all the points that have been left on the board, right? Like it starts with, that loss to San Jose. What was that? The second or third game of the season, Dave? And I mean, there's so many disappointing games, right? Like losing to the Ottawa Senators a couple of weeks back. I mean, we could come up with
Red Wings game.
Exactly. The Red Wings game, another one,
Coyotes.
the Red Wings team.
Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, you could come up with a dozen, right? So, but then you lose a game like this. And to me, it was eerily similar to that 7-1 loss to Colorado. That was, I don't know, 3 months ago at this point. I mean, this is just a much better team. Like we knew going into this game, Johnny Huberdeau is on the 12-game point streak, I believe. So now it's 13 games. We knew what have they won 9 in a row at this point. Best offensive team in the league, scoring more than 4 goals a game. Like everybody knew that. This Florida team is for real. They're a Stanley Cup contender. Who knows? I mean, they could get bounced in the first round. I mean, this Eastern Conference this year is stacked. We know the East is a lot deeper than the West, right, boys? But the point is, going into this game, you knew getting a good start was at the very least something that you wanted to do. And as you mentioned, you're down a couple of goals. And I think, going back to what you said about, Nikolai Ehlers' comments, Drew, I mean, I didn't watch the game live. We were having a nice little Passover Seder. I was enjoying some gefilte fish and some matzo ball soup. But, I watched the highlights and, the first couple goals, I mean, again, like Claude Giroux, I mean, we talked about you've added a superstar player to a team that's already stacked. And Giroux and Huberdeau, I mean, they were making it look easy out there. Well, like the defensive
made it easy for them too.
Exactly. And, the first goal, it's just a rebound off the boards and Hellebuck's a little bit out of position. Sure. But I mean, on the second goal, just poor defensive coverage. I think it was Brendan Dillon and Dylan Sandberg. As I mentioned, I wasn't watching the game live, so saw the highlights. But just turnovers, Josh Morrissey turned over the puck in the second period, which led to a Maxim Mammon scoring chance. He didn't score. And Dylan Sandberg on the fifth goal, Eric Comrie comes in. And again, I'm singling out Sandberg here. I'm a big fan of Sandberg's game. I'm not saying that, he's a bad defenseman. I'm just saying on this particular play, he just doesn't, do a good job of either moving the puck or freezing. That was the Mason Marchment goal. For those who are kind of wondering which goal I'm talking about, Mason Marchment.
There's a lot.
Yeah. And, Marchment just kind of, takes the puck from out of the corner and, stuffs it in past Comrie. Like, what I'm saying is, like, a lot of these goals are, preventable. These aren't, goals where, you say, okay, well, the Jets had absolutely no chance against Huberdeau and Giroux and some of the Panthers' best players. It's just soft defensively. And we've seen that way too many times. And that, I think, for me, is what needs to be fixed, whether that's systems, whether that's culturally. The Jets need to be stronger in front of their own net because they have too many good offensive skilled players, right? Like we know with Ehlers and Connor and Dubois, Scheifele, Wheeler. I mean, there's no shortage of good offensive players on this Jets team, but defensively, too easy to play against. And we sound like a broken record, but to me, watching the highlights of that game, that's what stood out to me. The Panthers were basically able to do whatever they wanted, in front of the Jets goal.
Well, Dave, Mark Sports Video, we just had the comment up on the screen, asks the question, and I think he's asking it sort of rhetorically, how do you leave Huberdeau that wide open, 2 minutes into the game? I don't know. I mean, I assume the Jets have a game plan or have an approach in how they want to play, but they refuse to play that way. I mean, you heard Nikolai Ehlers last night in his comments, and
he was guilty too, though.
Of course,
he made a soft play at the blue line. And again, Nikolai Ehlers has been one of the Jets' best players. So I mean, but you also have to call those guys out when they make mistakes. And like I said, he was soft at the blue line, which led to that puck staying in the Jet zone and ended up in the back of their net. So it's all across the board. It's not just,
and he wasn't he wasn't absolving himself.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, like, there's plenty of blame to go around for this entire club.
It's to not be ready to start the game, which is something we've seen multiple times. I mean, how many times have we seen this year that the team goes 6, 8, 10 minutes without registering a shot to start the game? And, when you do that against the team, when you're not ready to start a game against a team like the Panthers, the second best team in the NHL, this is the result you get.
Well, I think what it ultimately comes down to, Drew, is that this team hasn't been ready to start the game against all teams. I mean, it doesn't matter whether they're good or bad. They just aren't ready. They've had, how many games, guys, can we say, one game it's forgivable. 2, you're like, okay, fine. There's a malaise, right? That's lingering for a bit. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, boys, but you had a nice shot of vitamin D while everybody else was shoveling out snow here in Manitoba. You guys were, apparently I don't follow any of these guys on social media, but people are saying they're on the beach, and that's fine, right? Whatever. They had a day off. They're not going to sit in their hotel rooms. But the reality is they had a chance to relax. There's no excuse. Knowing the importance.
Unfortunately, though, Dave, they carried that into the first period of last night's game, though.
Yeah, exactly.
All three periods.
They were in Del Boca Vista. No, the second period, they outshot them, but it still doesn't really matter because they weren't like, look, the grade A chances, right? The high danger chances in the first period, 5-on-5, were 8-1 in favor of Florida. 8-1. It was an embarrassing start to the game. Because you're right, Drew, it could have been a 4-0 game, right? They have 2 goals disallowed. And very easily it could have been 4-0 for Florida. And it was, once it became 2-0 in the first couple of minutes, you knew it was over anyways. But this isn't like someone I actually was participating in the chat because my setter didn't start till after sundown. So I was able to watch the game in its entirety. And I was chatting with folks in the chat room here. And I said, this isn't, someone had made the joke about the Jets coming back. I said, look, this isn't the Jets of 17-18. This team doesn't have that comeback in it. And,
and it's also not the Panthers of 17-18 either.
Yes, exactly. Good point, Ezzy. This Panthers team is stacked to say the least. And so, look, you just couldn't afford to have that start. They can't seem to box someone out in front of the net. You're right. How do you leave Huberdeau that wide open to allow him to be able to gain position and just deposit that opening goal in the back of the net is a mystery to me, because oftentimes teams intentionally shoot to get that sort of rebound, right? Because you're trying to avoid all the traffic in front. So, whether it's a set play by the Panthers or not, the Jets just didn't have good defensive structure. Oh, how many times have we said that this season?
Well, that's
I was just going to wrap it up. Like the whole point is that, it's emblematic of what we've seen throughout the course of the season. So there's 2 things. You have a poor defensive structure. And like I said, I can't remember the last time you said, wow, the Jets had an amazing start. Like, maybe once in the last month, twice, but it's just
few and far between, Dave.
Yeah, that's right, Ezzy. It just seems like more often than not, you're saying to yourself, like, they're playing catch up, and this team right now isn't good enough to be catching up.
Especially against. I just wanted to say one thing, Drew, and then you can get in here. Like, Dave mentions the defensive structure and Ehlers' comments, and I just went back and quickly watched that second goal. Like, Ehlers could have easily turned that puck up. Right, he gives it away at the blue line.
That's right.
And I think, what we've seen so many times this year is turnovers, whatever it is, bad decision-making in the neutral zone that is permeated throughout the whole team. And you've seen it. And it's the play in front of the net, the boxing out in front of the net, leaving a guy too wide open. That's just a part of it. That's not everything. That is the most obvious, because usually that happens right before a goal is scored. But you see, like, Dylan Sandberg's out of position, right? He's chasing. then Jonathan Huberdeau and Claude Giroux, like, Brendan Dillon's left alone there.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not Dillon's fault. I mean, it becomes a 2-on-1 when it was, an even man situation. So, I mean, you're seeing bad defensive play all over the ice. And, in front of the net, I mean, again, I don't think it's as simple as, the Jets' small defenseman, everything like that. Neil Pionk, he can handle himself. Dylan DeMello's not 6'7". He's a guy that can handle himself. It's team defense, guys. Like, this team has to be so much better. And I think, it starts with the coaching staff. I think we've seen enough at this point to know that nothing's going to change. Like, is anybody going to be surprised if the Lightning pump the Jets tonight? 5-1, 4-0? Like,
well, look, I mean, every team knows that playing against the Jets, especially these upper echelon teams, they know that, more often than not, it's an opportunity to pad your stats. The Jets just refuse to play any semblance of structure to their game. You can't go run and gun against the Florida Panthers. You just can't. You're not as good as they are.
Which Dave Lowry came out and said after the game.
Right. Look, I think Dave Lowry is probably saying the right things.
Well, yeah, yesterday he to be honest with you, yesterday, when I was working on the post game hashtag on illegalcurve.com, then I thought, don't use the hashtag though, just go illegalcurve.com. And then, but honestly, when I was listening to him, he was basically saying, like, we can't do what we did last night. And the reality is, guys, they were lucky to be down 2-0. And I'm sure he said that in the second period. And did the team listen? No, because they were down 4-0. And then you had a goalie change because, they were like, well, what, like, look, there was one goal on Hellebuck that he should have, I think it was a fourth goal.
It was
that he should have. Yeah, the second Forsling one.
The second Forsling goal. Yeah.
The first it was deflected though, I think.
It was. It tipped off of Connor's stick.
Just in Hellebuck's defense.
No, I know it's harder, but I mean, he had a lot of there was a lot of daylight there, right? But anyways, look, the first Forsling goal was, I mean, again, that was the second good Panthers chance. I know it wasn't shorthanded because Forsling was in the penalty box.
Yeah,
but I think I'm just saying, I just think it was a situation where he knows this team is they just don't have it. They just don't have it. It's they just don't have it going on, unfortunately for them. And so, yeah, it was. And let me tell you, I jokingly tweeted saying that, a lot of fans left Manitoba to escape Snowmageddon, which of course wasn't Snowmageddon, hashtag fake news. And as a result of, going down to Florida, I thought, they might be better served flying back to Manitoba than subjecting themselves to watching that painful experience for however many hours it took.
The Living on a Prayer song was good though. Everyone seemed to be enjoying that.
Yeah, but the wave, when I saw the wave, and then and the glass bangers. Let's talk about the glass bangers. That was driving me crazy.
Florida's notorious for glass bangers, though.
They do. They are, Ezzy. You're right. But I had to tweet up my 13-year-old article. Glass bangers, morons or true fans? Most people said, and I quote, morons.
Well, we would know morons.
The only person that should be banging the glass is Mickey Moose.
The problem is you got two fundamental issues with this team. There's a coaching issue and an approach to the game and a defensive structure issue that can be resolved or should hopefully be able to be resolved through better coaching. And we've talked about the importance of better coaching. Craig Button has been on this show before talking about the importance of better coaching. And we all know that is going to be one of the most fundamental issues this offseason is, who is the next coach and what does he bring to the table and things of that nature. But as much as that is an issue, I do think that there's a tremendous amount of arrogance still in the locker room, in the dressing room for the Jets. Because coaching serves to motivate you to start a game, and coaching serves to create a structure for you. But when you're not ready to start the game and you don't play into that structure, or you lose that structure, or you consistently decide to abandon that structure, then there's an arrogance problem within the dressing room as well. And Nikolai Ehlers talked about it. When it's not going for you and you keep trying to push the nice plays and all of that, you're just, putting your team in a tough position. And it's just not one or two guys. It's almost everyone. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just we're not playing the right way. We've got to find a way against the Lightning, and that's what we're going to do. when we play the right way, we're a great team. And we haven't shown that enough. I'm skeptical if they're going to find it against the Lightning.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Of course, it doesn't matter. You're right.
Well,
It
so,
doesn't
I mean,
matter at this
even
point
if they
anyway.
win the game tonight against the
Doesn't matter.
Lightning, their season's over.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed wholeheartedly. When they play the right way, we're a great team. Not sure about that. They're better than they are and then they've looked when they play the right way. But fundamentally, they need to figure out why they can't play the right way or why they refuse to play the right way. And for this team, you know what Dave Lowry wants them to play. It's most coaches want it to be straight lines, dump it in, get the puck, cycle.
Dave Lowry, Drew, wants the Jets to play like the Calgary Flames are playing right now under his former head coach, Daryl Sutter.
Yeah.
That's who he learned from, right? Like when Lowry was a member of the Flames in 2004, we were there, no big deal. I think all three of us were there in Calgary, if I'm not mistaken. Drew, did you go? Oh, okay, I thought you might have made the. I know. Dave went. Richie and myself and Neil Rockman went down there, rocked our Jets jerseys in 2004 for the Green Mile. He wants to play like that, and I just don't know if he knows how to get the Jets to play.
The Green Mile was a movie, and the Red Mile.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry. I meant to say.
The Green Mile was what people had to watch last night when Drew Mindell was on Murderers Row.
No, that was actually the 11th plague, Dave. Yeah, the Red Mile is what I meant to say, but I just don't know if Lowry is the guy. I think Lowry's a good guy. I think he's a smart hockey guy, but I think at the NHL level, he's better suited to be an assistant coach or an associate coach. I just think he's over his head. I just don't think he takes over for Paul Maurice and, the results are worse. Right. And you expect at the very least, a bit of a bump and the Jets just never got it. And so I think, you make a good point. Like, it's not just coaching, it's, personnel as well. It's culture. It's the way this team is constructed. I do think, the Jets still lack, a bona fide number one defenseman. Like, I think Josh Morrissey is a tremendous defenseman, but, when you're talking about, the Lightning with Victor Hedman, or you're talking about the Panthers with, Aaron Ekblad, or, whoever, the Kings with Drew Doughty, even though he's injured, like, I think that's what they lack. And I think, the easiest way to acquire that is probably to trade Mark Scheifele. And I realize we're getting, out of the topic here, but I think, there is an issue with this team because I think in years past, because they had the best goalie in the world, they were able to outscore their problems. And it's a little bit more simple than that. But I see a lot of people, talking about positioning and everything like that. And they're right. I mean, the Jets, oftentimes, like, the Jets they don't look like a sharp team. Like, you look at the Carolina Hurricanes or the Florida Panthers or the Islanders, who by the way keep winning. Like, they have one of the best second half records in the NHL, even though they're 12 points out of the last playoff spot. But they keep winning. They just beat the Habs 3-0 last night, right? You watch the Islanders, like, they play as tight 5-man units, and they don't give up a lot of second chances. And you have to battle
a fundamental structure.
Exactly,
they have a coach.
And the Jets need that. So the coach has to instill it, but the players, you're right, Drew. I mean, they are the ones that perform on the ice, and they are the ones that carry it out. And you can't really have one without the other.
Well, they have the Islanders. You speak about the Islanders, and I know everybody's pipe dream is that Barry Trotz somehow gets dismissed or somehow leaves Long Island to come back to Winnipeg. I'd be shocked if it happens. I don't think Lou Lamoriello's making
Lou's
that
not
decision.
Letting Barry go.
No, I don't believe he is either. But they have a structure, and everybody knows what the structure is. And, I listen to Ehlers, and Ehlers speaks passionately, and he speaks honestly, and I appreciate it. And I listen to sometimes a guy like Morrissey or Stasny or, Adam Lowry, and they speak honestly and they speak passionately, and they don't try and blow smoke when there's clearly no smoke to be blown. And then I hear, I don't remember the last time Blake Wheeler spoke. And I'm not criticized for that in general, but I can't
2 days
go
ago.
back. Okay, well, I'm talking about after a game,
and he was injured before that. Just just
I'm not criticizing.
To clarify,
after a loss like this, and the only thing that comes to mind is when he was yammering earlier in the year about how there's no team in the NHL that's faced as much adversity as the Jets, and they're a young team, and it still sticks to me because I'm like, what are you talking about? People can accept honesty. And there's a time for brutal honesty. And maybe he's being that honest behind the scenes. I don't know. But you look at it and, the guy who wears a captain's C on his jersey and is supposed to be the one who's driving this team and driving it. And I'm not saying any of this is specifically his fault, but I think it does ring a little hollow when his insights into the team don't match up with reality at all. And so that's why I appreciate hearing from a guy like Nikolai Ehlers last night, who is brutally honest, if not anything, or honest at least, in saying that, the status quo for this team is not good enough and that changes need to be made. It's too late for this year, but it's going to make for a fascinating offseason as to how the Jets go about implementing those changes. Let's go to break. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us next. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. The opening interview is brought to you by Betway, one of the most trusted voices in sports betting, both in Canada and all around the world. Betway is the sports betting app that puts you, the customer, at the forefront with a large selection of betting options in sports, as well as strong promotions and fair odds. What are you waiting for? Head on over to Betway and bet your way. Must be 19 years or older to play. Please play responsibly. For the opening interview on this Saturday morning, we're pleased to welcome to the program the handsome man himself, our good friend, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. Jeffrey, you're looking good. How you doing, buddy?
Gentlemen, feeling good. Good morning. I was original plans were to stay away from Winnipeg, but the storm that didn't show up brought me back to Winnipeg. But I'm happy. I'm rested and ready to go. Looking forward to talking hockey with you, Jay.
And Hammer, aren't you also going to Drew's Passover Seder tonight?
Of course, yeah. Be there early. Welcome. Yeah, I'm just finding out now on the spot I can commit fully and truthfully.
By all means, you just have to put up with my parents for a few hours, and you're all in.
Hey, if I can put up with you on here for a little bit, I can put up with your parents for the evening. So it's,
I was going to say you can take my spot and take my kids if you want. I mean, I can really sit the whole thing out.
Whoa! I got limits too. Drew. Okay, I've seen you promote your kids and how as evidence to wait. So I'll I can, but that would be a fun time either way. Almost as fun as this show.
I'll tell you what, it's more fun than at least last night's Jets game was, Jeff. I mean, that was as one-sided as it gets, men against boys. What did you think of Nikolai Ehlers' comments post-game? I mean, he certainly was honest. I mean, didn't blow any smoke. Not that there was any smoke that could have been blown after that kind of performance. But, what does it say to you about the team that, we're still at game 75 and these are the fundamental issues that haven't been resolved at all this year?
Yeah, I just think the bar is so low for post-game truthfulness. So when somebody like Nikolai Ehlers comes out and shares, that things haven't, we're not playing the way we're expected to play. I mean, we keep hearing stuff like the right way. We keep hearing stuff about the Winnipeg Jets way. I think the problem is I don't think the players really know what that way is. I mean, we've been, what was it, 10 games ago, or not so much 10 games ago, maybe 20 games ago, where this team came out, or Mark Scheifele came out and said this team doesn't have an identity. Now we're hearing, whether it's Paul Stastny and Nikolai Ehlers isn't the first one. He's just the most recent one. So it's just nice to get a refreshing answer that there's problems with this team, right? That there's some accountability. But some of the comments, I thought Nikolai's most interesting comment was about accountability, right? That he was certainly looking inward and pointing at the fact that his line had allowed the first two goals of last night's game. But he was also talking about how there's really no accountability in the style in which this team plays, that it becomes, we've heard Paul Stastny talk about individual performances, and almost kind of when the game doesn't go their way or they get behind early, as we've seen so many times, it just, everyone kind of just pulls their own direction and what they believe is the success to come back, and there's no identity to tacked on. And I thought that was really the point of Nikolai Ehlers yesterday, was just saying that, no one's being held accountable for not committing to a style of play that may not be as, attractive to the offensively gifted players on this team, but is necessary to beat teams like Florida, who, if you're going to go on a punch for punch strategy, you're going to get knocked out. And we saw the Jets pretty much get delivered that punch, throughout the evening by the Panthers yesterday.
Hammer, I brought this up right before you came on with us, and I don't know how many other people feel this way, but to me, watching this team throughout the year, there's no doubt that the team defensive structure, the system, it needs to change, and that might cost a coach or the entire coaching staff.
Oh, Ezra, are you suggesting Charlie Huddy might not make a 13th season at this club? Is that and potentially a fourth head coach? Is that what you're nestling into?
Yeah, I know. I'm the first person to mention that, right? There's a few Jets fans that have been talking about that throughout the season.
Who says there's not job security in the NHL?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even have job security on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I might be replaced by Sean Reynolds or Huss, but when we look at when I look at this team, I see a lack of a bona fide number one defenseman. And we all know, I mentioned, whether it's Victor Hedman on Tampa, Aaron Ekblad on Florida, Cale Makar on Colorado. I am a huge fan of Josh Morrissey. I think you probably are as well, Hammer. Anybody that listens to the show knows that, I've been a big fan of his going back to, when he was playing for the St. John's Ice Caps. But to me, in addition to the fact that this team just needs to play better overall team defense, that to me, unless the Jets acquire that number one, Neil Pionk, great defenseman. I think Ville Heinola, he's got a bright future. But to me, like if there's one big move that you're going to make in the off season, in addition to the coaching staff and bringing in a new head coach, like to me, that's what this team lacks. The entire year, and especially over the last few weeks when it's clear the Jets aren't going to the playoffs, that's what stands out to me, that they just don't have, that shutdown defenseman that can take over a game like a Cale Makar or a Victor Hedman. What are your kind of overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Ez, and I think that's been something that's been, kind of talked about or thrown out there throughout the season, all while we're all talking up Josh Morrissey's game, right? I mean, Josh Morrissey is, it's certainly rebounded from an off season last year. Clearly, he was going through some emotional things with the loss of his father and stuff like that. He's certainly become the defenseman that the Jets expect this season. There's certainly elements of a game that were already good, such as his skating that have even improved this season. He's become, I think, more offensively driven. For a long time there, obviously in junior, anyone who would have watched him in junior would have known, his offensive prowess, and that was kind of his jam as a defenseman, was that offensive output. And then when he came, made his way to the NHL, he certainly had more defensive responsibility. And hearing Blake Wheeler's comments the other day about his game, about how he gets a bit of smile on his face when he sees Josh Morrissey retrieving the puck, because he knows it's going to be a clean breakout, but he needs help. And if you look at, as we love doing here, and going back to that 2018 run, that's just, we're going to be talking about that in 2026, about those pesky Jets and what they were able to achieve in that 2018 magical run that they lost to an expansion team.
Raise the banner.
Yeah. So when we start talking, the biggest difference between that team and this team is that depth on defense. I mean, this team had the luxury. I know he was a pretty, a bit of a lightning rod for fans. There was a lot of polarization with liking or hating him, but Tyler Myers was your third right-handed defenseman on this team, right? I mean, you had Jacob Trouba, you had Dustin Byfuglien, you had Josh Morrissey. So you had those, as strong a pieces. And I've said this maybe on this show, on other ones for sure. I thought it was a little bit of getting guys like, I think Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt were certainly upgrades, and it doesn't fall on those two guys, but they were kind of picked up. Nate Schmidt was coming off one of his worst seasons in the NHL with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, there was a ton of stuff going on in Vancouver with COVID and, his own personal stuff, yada, yada, and you hope that he rebound, and he hasn't been bad, but I just don't think that they're as good additions as, this team needs to make up for, their defensive deficiencies. And as much as they were upgrades, I just don't know if they were those guys that you mentioned as that are guys that, they're top four guys, but they're not top two guys. And so when you start compounding all the middle kind of defensemen and not have enough of those high ceiling that ultimately make guys like Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon strong players, is because they are third, fourth pieces with a couple strong pieces up top. Now, part of that conversation needs to be as well is that we haven't seen Neil Pionk play nearly, the way that we've seen him play in the two previous seasons. I think you could make the argument that Neil Pionk was the team's best defenseman last season and the season before that. This year, he's probably fourth, just with the way he's been playing, particularly after suffering that concussion. He just doesn't seem like the same player, doesn't seem as physically engaged. It's funny. I thought he was more physically engaged, more chasing it around in Montreal. I don't know if anyone would have noticed, but he was making rushes into the offensive zone and finishing hits. That's something we hadn't really seen from Neil Pionk for a good stretch here. But I just, it's just much like the forwards, throughout these games, very rarely do you find all of them finding that consistency on the same night. So it's usually one guy pulling the strings in one evening, then another guy doing that on defense. It's certainly been Josh Morrissey, but he hasn't really received the support that he needs for him to excel and for other guys to excel. So it's everyone's being on that blue line is being asked to maximize every single night, and we're certainly not getting it. And we're not getting, the defensive support from the forwards either. So it's a bit of a, I think that you need to start looking towards the defense when building this team. I think there's enough talent and there's enough holes that you just need to leave open for guys to come fill that aren't going to be high-end paid players, right? A lot of money dedicated to these forwards, and I think this offseason is going to be fascinating because you're going to need that support on defense and finding a guy who, can possibly be, if not your definitive number one, a very close to a Josh Morrissey type player.
Saturday morning, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Our guest from the Winnipeg Free Press, our good friend Jeff Hamilton, talking about the struggling Winnipeg Jets.
Well, Jeff, is it time to show that the kids are all right? I mean, look at all the players that the Jets have down on the farm, and there's guys that they're going to have to evaluate, and they're lucky in the sense that the left side prospects are all waiver exempt next year, so they don't have to worry about the Chisholms and the Sandbergs and the Heinolas even. But, Gavanke, 2017 fifth rounder, who's having an excellent season with the Moose. They haven't even looked at him at the NHL level. Johnny Kovacevic, he had a little taste. They've got, a side of what he can bring to the NHL, but not necessarily a huge one. He won't. Those two players won't be waiver exempt. So is it time for this team to just accept, listen, we can say we're not mathematically eliminated, but we know the Moose are going to go on a playoff run. They're hoping a long playoff run for the development perspective and maybe a financial one at this point. But what do you think in that regard? Do you think it's time to just say, listen, like we've got the cap space, Mike Yesmont, who obviously is on an emergency recall. They've still got 3 regular recalls left. So they could make some recalls, get some guys up and let them get a little bit of NHL action and see what they have in these players because they know what they've already got essentially with the guys up with the big club right now.
It's not an easy yes or no answer for me. I think anyone can look at where they are in the standings and go, yeah, this is the opportunity for people who you think might be the future of, might play future roles, or maybe you don't really have a full scouting report on a player because you just haven't seen them at this level enough. You would think that these last, even though, as they continue to show hope and belief, in their press conferences, but contradict that with their effort on the ice, there certainly would be opportunity for guys, even the guys who are waiver exempt to come up and continue that, that progression. I think what we're going to get here is we've seen that approach. These guys are going to go down with the ship. They are. There is going to be no pivot to, we're almost mathematically eliminated. There is going to be no reality check here in this last while until they've been ultimately eliminated. So I just don't see those moves being made unless guys who, the players are realizing, okay, we're not making the playoffs. My injury that I've been playing through is too much. I need to start thinking about my off season now. Me playing the last, 6-7 games of this season when we're probably going to be mathematically alive for 3 or 4 of them is just, maybe guys look at Mark Scheifele and go, what's Mark Scheifele's offseason going to look like now? Because he got injured in, meaningless games, even though they're technically not completely void of meaning. So unless that happens, I don't think it's going to come down to it. And I think a lot of players don't have that attitude either. Unless that injury is, I wouldn't look at a player and go, okay, they're out now with 6 games. They're not, and made that decision. I think these guys have, again, their play hasn't shown it, but I think just as a pride as a professional athlete, they don't want to pull themselves out of the lineup until they're mathematically eliminated either. Now, the other consideration I would add to all this too is that do you want to bring these guys up to this team right now? Do you want to introduce, these Manitoba Moose young players who are, finding ways to, have had for all intents and purposes, they've have had a strong season, will be going into the playoffs. I don't think, they're going to get away from their game if they come up, and whatever, but it might not be the most inviting culture. These guys, a losing locker room is not a fun locker room. So what I think ultimately happens here is they're going to get mathematically eliminated. And rather than necessarily taking a developmental approach, I can see this organization, which they might. There's guys, all those names, anyone that gets called up will have a developmental, advantage or, whatever. But it's kind of setting up to be one of those last 3 or 4 games cookies for guys. Mm-hmm. Guys that may not ever play, and I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but we've seen that in the past where it might just be okay, you busted your can all season. This is your cookie. rather than this is like, okay, we want to, whatever, right? We've seen that in the past happen. That might not change, but that's where I kind of see this, because right now this ship is just sinking, and we're slowly watching with absolutely no sign of management or coaching staff throwing a lifeline to any of the Moose players who potentially could come up and get those, whatever number of games in to develop.
Jeff, you look at this offseason, and it's obviously going to be a crucial one for True North. You've seen the empty seats in the arena. You know that the honeymoon period is, I think, officially over. You've seen, not every game isn't selling out by a long shot. This next head coaching hire, is this the biggest decision that this organization has had to make so far? And if so, is Kevin Cheveldayoff the right person to make that decision?
I certainly think it's one of the biggest decisions, because it's going to, unless you come out and say, you're rebuilding, which this team isn't going to do because they spent to the cap. At best, this team is going to be retooling. I think it's massive. And I have my own feelings about what's going to be a successful coach for this team, but successful coach of this team also, unfortunately for this club, needs to be optically as well. It's not just like, you can't just take a guy who you think is your guy and that, you're going to believe in wholeheartedly, because I think you will have, an answer from fans who want to see a direction, right? That want to see accountability, that want to see all these things. So, I don't know who. We've been talking about this for all season long, and it's easy to play these fun games. Like, a lot of people have Barry Trotz coaching this team. Well, he's still employed and probably isn't going anywhere. You know what I mean? So there's that. There's the talk about, Bruce Boudreau being a potential number. Could he be an asset? And then there's like, okay, well, he doesn't do well in the playoffs. Well, he gets teams to the playoffs. And, and maybe that winning recipe, that playoff recipe could be established here. We saw what he was able to do with Vancouver. If you look at Vancouver, they're doing better than the Jets in the standings too, and they don't have nearly as much talent. They have some good pieces, but they don't have what the Jets have, you could argue. So would Bruce Boudreau be a good option? Probably. Like I do think you need, just with the culture that's been built in that room, I think you need to have a coach that can be instantly respected by the leadership group here. And that's not going to be a coach who doesn't have an NHL resume. And I'm not saying that Pascal Vincent couldn't come in and do a good job and stuff like that. I just wonder if he's the, if the Jet, I imagine the Jets would love to give him his first opportunity. But I wonder, Dave, you know him well. He's a great guy, works with great players. I just don't know if he gets the voice of the bigger, the leadership group in here. You know who I'm talking about. I think this is, whether I think you need to have a guy like Paul Maurice was able to come in and do things because he had the resume. He had been the youngest coach. I mean, you can throw about how many losses he has against them. Absolutely, for sure. But they need an established coach. I think what they now need is an established coach and one that's willing to kick some ass and bring in a vision and not care who might be leaning. Because I saw C-Mac had a comment in here. I was kind of gleaning over to it. I think he's bang on. I think that the players feel like, fans will look at this and be like, oh, this guy signed a 7-year deal, 8-year commitment. He has a commitment from the Jets to make it the best 7 or 8 years of their life, not the other way around. Not come here, establish roots in the city, give back to the community. That's not the NHL we're looking at right now. And I think that's been established at the top, that they don't want to piss these guys off, that they want to make sure that everything is as smooth as possible, not just for them, for their families, and not have that ownership and accountability for this city. And I think that you need to bring that culture in. I think the good news is there's a handful of younger guys who we've seen shown levels of accountability that want to play on for this city, that feel an ownership of it, and that needs to be ushered in, and a coach needs to bring that to the forefront. And whether there's hiccups in the season, so be it. You know what I mean? But what this team needs to get back to is a pride and personality and identity that they're a tough team to play against. Because if you're constantly having to sell these winters to these teams and these other things, and the wins aren't there in the column, guess what? This city's going to get pretty old pretty quick. So that culture needs to change from the top, and it needs to be that's where I think the success of this team is, and particularly with a new coach, is coming in and establishing that identity right from the get-go. And I think they're going to need a resume behind them.
And I think you make a lot of good points, Hammer, and just listening to you, speak about, the Jets and, the need for that. It reminds me of, he was on the front page of the Winnipeg Free Press Sports section, Willie Jefferson, right? Like, he announced that his family lives in Winnipeg now. They're setting up shop in Winnipeg. It's also funny that, that article was written in the middle of a blizzard. But, I think of, Kyle Walters, and I think of Mike O'Shea and what they have built with the Bombers, right? So I think, I agree with a lot of the points you make. And I wanted to ask you about Connor Hellebuyck and not just about, his performance yesterday, but, I got to give Drew credit here. I don't like to do that, but, Drew's been talking about this for months now. Like, I was personally, I don't know if you were as well, like, I was pretty surprised that they gave him, the Montreal game and the Ottawa game. Like, we know that they're a long shot to make the playoffs, even though the Jets are not going to admit that. They're going to battle, and they're going to say the right things, and they're going to say that, they want to win every single game, and, hope that they get some help from the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights. But the question is, you look at Hellebuyck, 63 starts. I'm not sure if he's number one in the NHL, but he's definitely there. I was going to say he's at the very least, top three right now.
Like, look, Drew's got your back,
Exactly, I know. And just sometimes, not all the time, though. Dave M always has my back. Drew, it's kind of like, 40% of the time. He's always behind me with that knife.
And then the 60%, I stab you right in there.
Exactly.
A2SA.
Murder capital of Canada, right? We're not going to get into that. But do you think that the Jets need to reevaluate, the way they use Hellebuyck? Because, and I should mention, Dave has been in favor of more starts for Comrie. I think, by the way, Comrie will get the start tonight, at Amalie Arena against the Lightning. But I mean, to me, it just seems like, again, maybe this goes back to what you said before, Hammer, but it just seems like, the Jets are going to continue to ride Hellebuyck, or at the very least, they've done that up until this point. I think you could obviously see Mikhail Burden one of the last couple of games, and you're probably going to see Comrie at least twice in the last 6 games of the season. But what have you thought about the way Hellebuyck has been used? Because I think at times, and last night might be a great example, it seems like this guy's just played way too much this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what needs to be acknowledged here is how many years Connor Hellebuyck's been doing this for. And it's not going to get easier every year. It's, in fact, spoiler, going to get tougher on the body every year. As we've noticed, gentlemen, as we've crept up in age, getting out of bed becomes a bit of a challenge. Now imagine, just put yourself in the shoes of playing 60+ games in the National Hockey League. It's enough to make you fall asleep. But the reality is for this team is that they've been able to ride Connor Hellebuyck hard. And I think Connor Hellebuyck's mentality is I would play, 82 out of 82 games. I think he would probably play even higher than the amount that he gets, but it's slowing him down. I mean, at the end of the day, these issues, like Connor Hellebuyck is not the first goalie to want to play off, as much as possible, right? I mean, if you pooled all the goalies, I'm sure there would be some goalies out there that know exactly their sweet spot, right? They know how many, and they don't want to go higher and they don't want to go lower. But there's a lot of people in this league that would play a lot of games, that feel that they are physically capable of playing a lot of games. So it's not like the Jets don't, it's like their unique problem where they need to sit their goalie down. I just think they have an issue with not riding them. And it has to be a bit of trust again. I know it's not trust from the players, because every time we ask, there have been times, particularly of late, when we ask about Hellebuyck's strong performances, everyone to a man is very, 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 clear about it's a goalie tandem that's helped them. People will go out of their way to mention Eric, and that's not just because he's got he's a good guy. He's played well. And so there obviously is, I don't want to paint this lack of super big lack of trust in Eric Comrie, but obviously it's not enough to, for the coaching staff to not want to ride their number one through some pretty intense circumstances, including these last little while. I wasn't surprised at all to see him in Montreal. In fact, when I asked about it, prior to puck drop against Ottawa, and the answer from Dave Lowry was, we have a plan and yada, yada, right away, I knew, you know what I mean? This was like, the plan was, we're going to go with Connor Hellebuyck unless he tells us he can't go. And he had a busy night against Ottawa. Like, he didn't have a crazy busy night, but it was busy-ish. And so I wasn't all that surprised to see him play against Montreal. And then when I asked him after Montreal about the plan, he's like, we're fighting for our lives, right? We're in desperation mode, and we're not going to, we're going to have to lean on our guys. So I think, Connor Hellebuyck's playing the rest of the season until they're mathematically out. Now, again, to my original point is I think that they're not, and I know they have tests, they have things that test you mentally, physically, all, certain things that go into these decisions. But I do think that the more and more you're asking a guy as he climbs up and up in age, the more effects it's going to have on him, later in his career. And I just think at this point, you need to bring a guy in. And you have a guy, I think, in Eric Comrie. I think that was the big question mark heading into the season, was that we knew that this team was cap crunched. Kind of felt like a little bit of a token for Eric just because he hadn't established himself anywhere. It wasn't like he was, cleaning up, tidy wins in this league. And then I think we saw this year not just, him capable of doing that, but a team that played strong in front of them and just didn't get more opportunity. So I think it's easy to look back at it now and go, oh yeah, Eric Comrie should have had more opportunity because the Jets are on the outside looking in and aren't going to make the playoffs. Now you find yourself in a situation where you need wins. You've already bumbled this whole, workload for him, and now you're just going to ride him out. And it just seems like, I'm no expert. I'm not going to pretend I'm some National Hockey League head coach, but it just doesn't seem like seems like a lot of things in here throughout the season that look like they could have been maybe eased a little bit rather than completely, almost, because Jets have been playing desperate hockey since January. And when you're playing desperate hockey, it works on you not just physically, but mentally. And the load has been heavy on Connor Hellebuyck for these last couple months. And to just expect him to kind of be in there, to bail you out, pretty much every time he steps in, you have a backup in Eric Comrie that's been doing that for you and getting you victories. So, it's easy for me to say, why wouldn't you play Eric Comrie more? But I just think down this stretch here, he's probably going to get, I think, as you mentioned, maybe as 2 more games when the Jets are out of the playoff picture officially.
So what you're saying, Jeff, maybe, is that the Jets have been flying by the seat of their pants when it comes to the goaltending deployment this season. And I would concur with that statement, given the flip a coin approach they seem to have taken to their goaltending. Jeff Hamilton covers the Winnipeg Jets for the Winnipeg Free Press. Jeffrey, thanks so much. We'll see you for the Passover Seder in about 6.5 hours or so is when I think we're getting started. Be sure to wear your finest 3-piece suit and bring a nice bottle of wine to the table.
I was going to say, just text me what I need to bring. I'll be there half an hour early.
Jeff, if you want to come to a real one, we start in 11 hours, so you're welcome after sundown.
Hey, look,
they do it a little different.
Guys, look, there's so much anger in this world. I need to pit your parties against. Look, I'll start at Drew's. I'll head to Dave's. I'll probably go back to Drew's, and I'll end the night at Dave's. Okay, so we'll make it real easy for both sides. Is that fair?
That is a man who's willing to make a commitment. We appreciate that.
Have you ever had gefilte fish?
I'll be texting you the entire time about how brutal these parties are. Okay, we'll add that added layer to it. Anyways, appreciate having me on, guys. Thanks so much. Shout out to the shout out to the commenters too. You know how they make this show. So take care, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We'll talk to you soon, Jeff. Thanks. There you go, buddy. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Let's take a break. When we come back, more Jets talk. Brian Engblom, Tampa Bay Lightning analyst, joins us at the bottom of the hour.
And Winnipegger.
And Winnipegger, of course. Yes, we know Brian.
SJR grad.
Yes, we know him very well. We'll talk to Brian in about 30 minutes time, but when we come back, more Jets talk. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. The Illegal Curve Triumvirate is here on a Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. We're live here on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. There's a post-game show later tonight, assuming everything goes smoothly as it relates to family dinners and whatnot. But Ezzy and I are, at least at this moment, planning on being here later tonight, right around 8:45.
Well, I'm coming to your Seder, Drew, so we'll be together.
There you go. We're going to be together. We'll be.
You need to adjust Ezzy's levels there. He's coming hard and through the mic.
I came to him. I think I came to a Mindell breakfast one year, actually.
You did,
and then I wasn't invited the next year because I was putting food in garbage bags to take home, and it was really awkward. It was really awkward.
You knocked over my.
Sheldon and Tana said never again.
Yeah, you knocked over my elderly grandparents to get to the buffet table first. It was there was a fire in the house, and you shut the door behind everyone and knocked over all the women and children. It was really awkward for everybody involved. So yeah, that was a one-time only sort of phenomenon. But if you come to the window tonight, Ezzy, maybe we'll shovel some food through a crack in the window and see if you can get satiated that way. We're nothing if not reasonable people.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I'll take what I can get.
A post-game show later tonight, 8:45. Ezzy and I will be planning to be back together to talk about the Jets and the Lightning. Sounds like Brian Elliott in net for the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. We don't know who the Jets starting goaltender is going to be. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Connor Hellebuck. I mean, this team seems to be fooling themselves with, in their deployment of the goaltenders. And I really don't know why Eric Comrie can't have a start. It just seems like this team doesn't really have an approach. There's no, the best teams have a strategy. And I think there's clearly been no strategy for this Winnipeg Jets for the majority of this year. There's been
I don't know if it's not having a strategy, Drew, versus having the wrong strategy or a weak strategy. I think it's safe to say there's a strategy. I mean, these guys, we have to give the Jets head coaching staff a little bit more credit than that, right? Like Jamie Compound, he's got Stanley Cup rings. Huddy's got Stanley Cup rings. Like, I don't think it's that they don't have a strategy. I just don't think it's been, executed properly. That's what I would say, at least.
Fine, I can accept that, Dave. I mean, I can accept that as I'm sort of two minds. I liked your question to Jeff there, Dave, about the Jets and what they should do over the remaining games here, because the season's over. We know that they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not. Yeah, we're not mathematically eliminated. You're mathematically eliminated. Don't give me that nonsense. Don't pee on me and tell me it's raining.
It's at 0.1%, and there's 6 games left, guys. It's over.
It is over. From the Moose perspective, though, Dave, everything's just going so well with them that I'm not sure. And I know that it's not a Moose Minute. This is, I know your ears are perked up there.
I got very excited. I know.
No,
I'm not going to lie. I was starting to fall asleep a bit, but suddenly I heard Moose and I was like, what?
Just, I mean, I think the way the Moose are going, there's no reason to try and almost give them that carrot to come into the NHL at this point. It's not going to do anything developmentally wise for these players. I think the carrot for these Moose players is maybe some rest if they're able to get some, if they're able to need some, so that they can get on a run for the Calder Cup, because I think that will, I mean,
but they've already clinched a playoff spot, Drew, and they can't finish first, right? So I'm with Dave. Like, I think, sorry to cut you off. I'll let Dave get in here because he is the Moose insider. But I think you want to take this opportunity. And, again, I hate to harp on this, but especially guys that are, waiver, that could be eligible for waivers next year, right? Dave's mentioned this, Leon Gavanke, Johnny Kovacevic. Like, why wouldn't you reward those guys with at least a couple games in the NHL to end the season?
Look, Drew, unfortunately, your words are spoken like someone who's never played in the NHL. Now, I, too, have never played in the NHL, but the reality is the biggest mistake the organization can make is not giving guys an opportunity like that. So you might think it's meaningless, but I'm telling you right now, it's not meaningless for these guys. It's extraordinarily important. And you can hear it in the pride when you talk to these guys. I'm trying to think, we were just talking with Declan Chisholm. I was at Moose practice on Monday, I think it was. And you can hear how they speak about, 7 guys making their NHL debuts with Winnipeg this season, and how much, like I said, the Moose are a collective team. So these guys are excited when they all make it. Like I said to him, and we talked about it, when Johnny Kovacevic made his NHL debut here in Winnipeg, the entire press box to the right of us in our seats in the legal curve was full of Moose guys, because they were all there to support him. And the truth is, one of the biggest mistakes this organization ever made, and it goes back a few years, I want to say maybe the 15-16 season, was with Brendan Kitchen. Brendan Kitchen, folks might remember, was
former Ice Cap.
That's right, and went back in the draft, and the Jets got him. I think the Islanders originally taken or something. I don't remember exactly. Islanders took him, and then he went back in the draft. He was the Moose probably top offensive player, and he's a defenseman, obviously. And what happened was they took him on that California road trip. It was a meaningless road trip, completely meaningless. The Jets were out of it. And rather than giving Kitchen a chance to play in the NHL, they never gave him that game. And
they took him on the road, but they didn't play him.
Took him on the road, but they never played him. It made no sense. Made no sense from an organizational standpoint. And Kitchen came back I remember the Jets flew in on a Sunday morning at 4:00. The Moose were playing an afternoon game. He called head coach Keith McCambridge, so it would have been the 15-16 season, their first year back. And he called Keith McCambridge and he said, I want to play this afternoon. And he flew in at 4 a.m. from California, but I think he was so irritated, and he had a great game. And then I don't know if that was the game he had the OT winner, but the point is that it was a mistake. He never got an NHL shot. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's going to be the same with as a Leon Kavanke. I just think from a carrot perspective, it goes a long way, because I think, like I said, this could be someone's only chance to play in the NHL. To play in the NHL is not a guarantee. Now, these guys might get claimed, but they may never end up making the NHL. And again, this year was an exceptional year because of COVID. If next year doesn't happen the way this year did, look, like guys got chances, not because, Dylan said, not because Neil Pionk was hurt, or because,
Mark Scheifele was hurt.
Nate Schmidt was hurt. They got chances because these guys were put into COVID protocol. So draft picks got called up, and Sandberg made his debut, and Chisholm made his debut, and Kovacevic made his debut. So it wasn't as if this was some grand design. It wasn't as if these guys got in because of the merits of what they were doing with the American Hockey League team. They got in because of circumstances. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's just the reality of the situation. So I think you give the guys a shot. You give a guy like Leon, like I said, Leon Kavanke, of all the players, is the most important. Johnny Kovacevic, I think he's on the team. He's big. He can skate. He's got a physical edge. He's your either third pairing right side defenseman, or he is an easy seventh. I mean, he's a guy that, to me, you put him in there and he's not going to cost you a lot of money, and it's a no-brainer with him. But Leon, you don't know yet what you have at the NHL level. Put him. But also,
David was going to say Kovacevic already got, what did he get? 4, 5, 6 games
he's
earlier
got
in the season.
Yeah, he's got
a little bit different situation than Gavanke.
Yeah, but and my point is that you give Leon that shot because you see what he can do. And look, Neil Pionk is clearly hurt, right? I mean, to me, this is why this organization doesn't make good decisions, because you have a guy. Why do you need an NHL guy who's at 50% when you have a capable AHL player who is at 100? And that, to me, is the decisions that they make that are short-sighted And if they have bad short-term vision and bad long-term vision, because the truth is, like I said, you need to be able to know what these guys are going to give you next year, if you're going to have to assign them, if they're going to get claimed anyways. So I just think from an information perspective, not from you're not just doing this because you're a really nice guy and you want to give Leon Gawanke his first NHL game. You have to think about it it's a business perspective.
And Drew, by the way, Drew's not wrong. Player. His perspective is not wrong. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but if the Jets still think they have a chance at making the playoffs,
they don't.
We need to give some heads, a few shakes here, because it's over. They're not making what is the point one? Is that Dallas and Vegas losing every single game, but the Jets would still have to win. I think they'd have to still win 6. It's over. I mean, even the most optimistic Jets fan knows that the Jets are not making the playoffs this year. So I think that's what it's about. The Moose have clinched a playoff spot. It would be a little bit different if the Moose hadn't clinched a playoff spot, I believe. But, I don't think they can catch the Wolves, Dave, or they can't, right? So they're going to finish second or third in the division.
Chicago needs
right?
three points.
So, I mean, with 2 games left in the season, 3 games left in the season, whatever it is, I mean, reward some guys. And I agree. I mean, you don't think that meant the world to Mikey Esimont to get his first 100%. NHL game? Everybody knows that, Drew. It's not like this is something, new for you. I just think it would be a waste. You've got the recalls. I'm not saying that you call 9 guys up from the Moose, obviously, but especially a couple of guys, that I think have earned the opportunity. I think at the very least, those guys should be given a game or 2.
Well, let's talk about the defense for next year, because Dave just rattled off the list of defensemen that are on the cusp of making the NHL level or should have a legitimate shot at making the NHL level. But we know the reality of the situation for the Jets defense. Kevin Cheveldayoff, in acquiring Brendan Dillon and in acquiring Nate Schmidt, has put a glass ceiling on the number of defensemen that are eligible to break through. There's 6-7 defensemen under contract for next year at the NHL level. And that doesn't include really Dylan Samberg, or pardon me, that includes Samberg. It doesn't even factor in Ville Heinola. It doesn't factor in if the Jets go out and get another depth defenseman. So what happens? How does that log jam get fixed? I mean, that is another huge factor about this offseason.
The obvious one, Drew, is moving defensemen out. I mean, that's right. Really the only way, because you have so many guys on long-term contracts, right? It's not like you have one of your top 6 defensemen that you need to sign to a long-term deal.
No,
these guys are all locked up.
But how are how are they going to make that? I mean, because Brendan Dillon, at just under $4 million a year. I don't know how much for the next 2 seasons after this one. I don't know how much appeal there is for other teams. Nate Schmidt at just under $6 million for the next 3 years. I don't know how much appeal there is for other teams. Is there appeal for Neil Pionk at $5.8 million for the next 3 years? Yeah, I think there is. I think Neil Pionk,
of those 3, I would agree that he's probably number 1.
Yeah, Dylan DeMello for 2 more years at $3 million. Yeah, there's probably some appeal there. For a guy, if you need a stay-at-home guy who sort of quietly goes about his business.
Well, if you're going to trade the Jets' best defensive defenseman in a year in which you haven't been, good defensively, I think that would be a shocker. I don't see DeMello going anywhere.
Well, but my point is, I mean, you thought you solved the problem last year with your off-season defensive acquisitions, but truthfully, all you've done, as it happens, which of course you wouldn't have known at the time, is you've created future problems for years to come because you now have that roadblock for those young defensemen Dave spoke about. So those guys don't need any more seasoning at the AHL level, Dave. And I know you're an advocate for, being patient with guys, but what does Samberg need at the AHL level anymore? What does Heinola need at the AHL level anymore? Kovacevic, Chisholm, maybe they could use a little bit more at the AHL level, but not a ton. And so you have this problem where you're sort of between a rock and a hard place, and I don't know how it gets solved, and I don't know if Kevin Cheveldayoff is the guy to solve it as well, Dave.
Well, I think what it comes down to, Drew, is the fact that you've got a team that Kevin Cheveldayoff made one critical error. He got guys with term, and that was a huge mistake. he needed to get new guys in here. There's no question about it. And I actually don't have a problem with these, the Dylan Sandberg played another 32 games for the Manitoba Moose. And I would argue he really, he blossomed again under a Moose assistant coach, Eric Dubois. And I think guys talk. I mean, remember, people want to put these guys right out of college or right out of junior, right into the NHL because they're ready to go. I would talk to people who cover college hockey. We don't watch college hockey games, so we can't. I mean, other than when I watched Kyle Connor's games for Michigan back in the day, but like I don't watch them, so I don't know. But I would talk to people who did, and they would say he needs seasoning in the AHL. Well, he's had the seasoning, two straight seasons, I think about 32 games a year for the Moose. Dylan Sandberg has gotten what he needed out of the AHL. Now, don't get me wrong, Dylan Sandberg still makes mistakes. We saw it last night, and that's why. I mean, we see it at the AHL level. It's not a function of him not being able to, he's not a perfect defenseman by any stretch of imagination, but he's good. He's got that streak. He's big. He can skate. There's a lot of good things that Dylan Sandberg can do. But I think, the further to the point, Drew, the problem with this Jets club is that you've got guys who've created a logjam. Brendan Dillon, guy with term. Nate Schmidt, guy with term. So if you didn't have those two guys, then you had an opportunity. And that goes back to this idea of, everybody not being on the same page because, from one point of view, like last year, for example, you had a lot of these guys on the Moose. Why not have given them auditions, longer auditions, and then you could see what you had? Because, and I guess that's kind of the point I'm making with Leon Duvanque. What do you have in him at the NHL level? Because you know what you've got in him at the AHL level. So it's the same with all of these guys. And like I said, the Jets have the luxury, quotes, of not having to worry about the left side guys. Now, Chisholm, I think, is a great skater. I think he can still use some development time. So I don't have a problem with him staying in the AHL next year. That's not an issue for me. But like I said, Heinola, I don't think so. Sandberg, don't think so. So now you've got, and Kovacevic, you don't have that reality because he would be claimed in a heartbeat. So to me, you've now run out of options from a coaching perspective. Mm-hmm. And from a managerial perspective, really, that's the more important one. So Kevin Cheveldayoff, the quote, "This is Weekend at Bernie's Part 2, this Summer of Chevy Part 2, because he has to figure out."
Part 2 was better than the first part, by the way.
There you go. So I mean, that's
a film. Point. It's not a movie, Dave.
There you go. Sorry,
I thought it was a cinematic experience, not a movie.
Well, the point
the cinematography in that movie was exquisite.
Regardless of the quality of said film or movie or whatever. I think that it's just a function of what this coaching staff is going to have to do is they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do in terms of, are they going to trade the guys now and run with these young guys? Because look at what you've done this year, right? I mean, now are you going to blame the defenseman that you had? Are you going to blame the lack of structure that you had? Is it a combination of both? Can you get more out of Ville Heinola, Dylan Sandberg, Johnny Kovacevic sprinkled in amongst all of these other guys? And then maybe guys, you've been in cap hell, right? Like, look at the cap situation for this Jets club. Look what it does, how differently it looks without, $6 million of Nate Schmidt, without $4 million of Brendan Dillon. Like, that's a lot of money.
A lot more cap space.
A lot more cap space. And none of those guys that I've mentioned, Heinola, Kovacevic, Sandberg, they're not costing you that. Now, you're not going to just reduce cap space simply to make it a more affordable team. That obviously is a bit counterproductive. You want to be able to put the best team out there on a nightly basis. And my question is, are you confident in this defensive group? And do you need to change it? So that's what I'm saying. There's a million questions that are going to need to be answered. And I just think going back to my original point, that idea of adding information, see what you have in Leon for 2, 3, 4 games at the end of the season. You know what you've had, like as he said, you know what you got in Kovacevic in a number of games. You know what you got in Sandberg. You know what you have in Stanley. You know what you've got in the rest of the defensive team. And now the question is from Mark Chipman and David Thompson is, do you trust in this coaching staff, the management staff ability to evaluate their talent? And if you don't, then you have to make changes there and changes the coaching staff and everywhere across the.
I want to get one thing in.
I just want to say that I think Spencer makes a great point. It's on the screen. Spencer Sutton. It's the Steve Mason situation all over again. The Jets thought that they had a goaltending problem. They go out. They get Steve Mason, and he's signed to, I believe it was a 3-year deal, or a 2-year deal back in the day, whatever they signed Steve Mason for. They end up having to salary dump Steve Mason on Montreal, and what does it cost them? It cost them Yoel Armia. I mean, Yoel Armia, whatever you want to say about him, would certainly look good in the bottom 6 of this Winnipeg Jets team. And you could argue,
the Jets.
Well, you could argue that that's a guy that they haven't really been able to replace. in the years. That kind of guy. They've always been looking for that.
They also didn't have 4 really good prospects on the left side, banging at the. I know what Spencer's saying there, but I mean, I think it's simple. I think you have to move a left shot defenseman. We know. Look, we can talk throughout all the names, everything like that. You got to move. I would be surprised if they didn't move at this point Brendan Dillon or Logan Stanley. I really would. I think, whether Chevy, is the GM or they bring in somebody else, I think it's as simple as that. You have too many guys, specifically on the left side. I get a little bit more nervous if you're, moving a Nate Schmidt or a Neil Pionk on the right side, because, who's replacing him? I mean, in theory, you would trade him and maybe replace him, with somebody else in that trade, or you would sign him. But I mean, I love Brendan Dillon, what he's brought to this team, the physicality, he can drop the mitts. He can chip in, a little bit of offense every once in a while. But, Dave makes a good point. I mean, you have these guys. What does Dillon have? 2 years left on his deal? 2 or 3 years left on his deal? I think, you have to look at moving him. And like I said, I personally would be surprised if he isn't moved at this point.
Well, you know what? It's funny. You talk about Logan Stanley, and Logan Stanley has certainly struggled this year after he had a good year last year, sort of unexpectedly. And all we heard in the lead up to the expansion draft was, if the Jets have to protect Logan Stanley because he'd immediately get taken by the Kraken, or immediately he's going to be picked by the Kraken. You have to protect Logan Stanley. You have to protect Logan Stanley. Well, if there's that big of a market for Logan Stanley, or if there was that big of a market for Logan Stanley, there should still be somewhat of a market for him despite his struggles this year. He hasn't gotten any smaller. He's still a big, tall guy. If that's the case, then let's see what kind of market is available for Logan Stanley.
But the problem is, Drew, though, he has to be, sorry to jump in here, but the problem is, Stanley's either your third pairing left side defenseman or he's your seventh defenseman, because you've got Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg, who next year could be your second and third left pairing defenseman, unless you're going to replace him, unless Brendan Dillon's around again. So that's the issue here, is that these younger prospects have now surpassed Logan Stanley in terms of, Ville Heinola is not going to be your seventh defenseman next year. So whether it's Samberg or Heinola on your left side, if you're going to keep both of those guys around, that's the issue here. You can't keep having these guys in positions in no man's land. You have to have a plan here, and that's what Dave was saying. There's a bunch of different moves that need to be made, but as far as I'm concerned, that's where you start, do you not? If you've got all these great young left side prospects, Declan Chisholm wasn't even mentioned. Doesn't it make sense that you have to move out one or two left side defensemen? Forget about the right side here for a second. I mean, you need to find room here for Samberg and Heinola. You used first and second round picks on these guys. You developed them. It's time for these guys to play in the NHL.
And the problem with trading away Stanley over Dillon is Stanley only makes $900,000. That's not solving your salary cap issue at all. You trade away Brendan Dillon, that's $4 million off your books for the next 2 seasons. But the caveat there is, if you're trading away Brendan Dillon, I don't know that anyone's giving you any real asset for it. Now, the asset is salary cap space. So you're probably,
that's what I was going to say. That's a pretty good asset right there, right?
For the Jets, it is. You're probably looking at a straight salary dump at that point in time. And this, or does somehow Brendan Dillon become a buyout candidate? I don't expect that to be the case. The Jets have used, if I recall correctly, the only player they've ever bought out was Mark Stewart. If I'm correct. And, I see people last night on the Drew Mindell experience, people were saying, the Jets buy out Blake Wheeler. Well, no, they shouldn't buy out Blake Wheeler, because yes, he's overpaid, but he can still produce.
That would cost the organization a few $1 million as well.
Well, exactly. Brendan Dillon, it's not going to be an easy buyout to stomach, but if you can't salary, I mean, you should be able to salary dump him for. And you don't have to expect much back. You should be able to maybe.
What about, Drew, teams like the Senators or teams that we've seen recently? The Senators, the Red Wings, the Coyotes, the Devils, teams that are horrible defensively. Ottawa's going to get Jake Sanderson next year, and Thomas Chabot is a bona fide number one defenseman. But you got to think there's at least 3 to 5 teams that would take Dillon as a second pair defenseman.
You would think so. And even if it doesn't cost them anything except the salary cap space that they already have, the Jets should be looking to make that kind of move. There's just you can't come back with the same defense because you have that logjam you just created. And I know you need 10 defensemen, in the course of an NHL season. That's the adage, the number of guys that you usually need in your lineup. But that being said, that's when you have to go into your depth. You just have to have a space for the Sambergs and for the Heinolas to move forward. Never mind the other guys, Dave, that are at the Moose, who really seem on the cusp of breaking through. And those can be your guys that you call up when the injury bug inevitably hits on your back end.
Which is a good segue, Drew,
Yes.
to the fact that we've already given away 4 tickets for today's Moose game, which starts at 2:00. I'll be there covering the game for illegalcurve.com. I won't be doing a Minuk Moose Minute tonight, but maybe I'll pre-record one and send.
You're bringing your Louisville Slugger, Dave?
I am not. I'm not.
Is it the baseball game?
I think that's tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I'm not sure what the pro. I think it might be tomorrow.
Bring your catcher's mitt.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so we gave away 4 tickets for today's game, but we have 4 tickets, premium tickets, right against the glass, right behind the visitors bench.
The IC zone.
You have to commit to not being a glass banger, though. You can't be a glass banger.
No
wave. You also have to wear Drew's Mardi Gras mask.
There's no wave allowed and no glass banging. But other than that, they're pretty ridiculous seats. So if you want to go, oh God,
please, for the love of God, take that off.
You know, I mean, after as he wore his New Year's glasses, I mean, it's all kind of like it's kind of a little cliche, but anyways, if you want to go to the Moose game,
is it weird that my wife asked me to wear this in bed last night?
Oh God! Well, that was a Drew Mindell after dark experience.
Drew, you better get that off, or Brian Engblom might just sign out.
Yeah, I'm about to sign out. Anywho, if you want to go to the game tomorrow, it's a 2 p.m. start. Moose are playing the Ice Hogs. Could potentially be a first round matchup. We'll see what happens with Rockford. They're chasing, and like I've talked about a lot, they'll be an interesting team because they'll get some prospects back ahead of the playoffs, unlike Milwaukee, who is the other team that the Moose are going to be playing in the playoffs. So could be playing in the playoffs, I should say. So if you want to go to the game, send me a DM because you're probably already a subscriber. So I'm not going to tell you that you have to subscribe. Send me a DM at IC Dave or send me an email, dave@illegalcurve.com. And you don't take all 4. You can take 2 and somebody else can take 2. And then you guys can meet and chat about the Illegal Curve hockey and post-game shows. But yeah, really good game tomorrow. If you want to go, let me know and send me an email or a DM.
There you go. Dave M. Crazy Dave left the ticket-making machine on. He's going to give them away. Give him a DM at IC Dave or email him, dave@illegalcurve.com. Let's go to break. Final time. When we come back, Brian Engblom is going to join us to talk about the Lightning ahead of tonight's Jets and Lightning contest. Don't go anywhere. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube.
Nolans, baby.
We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Pleased to be joined now by our good friend, Tampa Bay Lightning analyst Brian Engblom joins us. Brian, good morning. How are things?
Everything's great, guys. How are you doing? It's a nice day here in Tampa, the usual. I hate to rub it in. I know you guys have had some rough weather lately, and being born and raised there, I know how that can feel in the spring. So my condolences.
We appreciate it.
Just a small blizzard, Brian. You know, no big deal.
There's no such thing as a small blizzard.
Unless you're at Dairy Queen, that's the only place where you can get a small blizzard. You're right about that, Brian. Obviously, the Jets and the Lightning tonight for the first time at Amalie Arena this year. You know, the Lightning are in third spot in the Atlantic Division. They're 4 points behind the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're 3 points up on the Washington Capitals. You know, is it important for the Lightning where they finish at this point in the season, or do they just want to have their game sort of at the right position for the start of the playoffs?
Yeah, they don't really care. They've been saying that actually the last couple of seasons. I think what maybe influenced them a fair amount was a couple of years ago when they had 62 wins and they won the President's Trophy and had a prompt exit from the playoffs. So did they think it meant anything? No. So at this point and ever since then, it's just like, yeah, just get in, make sure you get in first. And then, you know, the attitude of anything can happen. I don't think they even really care whether they have home ice advantage or not. They certainly have I'd have to say, have played that way over the last couple of weeks even. There hasn't been a lot of urgency, you know, in their game. And I think that reflects their record lately. And look, you know, today's NHL is so well balanced. If you don't have the urgency, I don't care if you're playing the 28th place team, it's going to be the difference on a lot of nights. If you want to just play skill, and some guys, maybe you have 4 or 5 guys who are just kind of there, you're not going to win, even if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we've seen some of that. I don't think they're afraid of starting on the road. They are one of the better teams in the league on the road. So they're just trying to get their game in gear going down the stretch here.
Brian, how would you assess the big trade deadline acquisitions that the Lightning made? Obviously, you know, there were, you know, a lot of rumblings around the league about, you know, the price that they had to, you know, pay for Brandon Hagel, who's a really good player. He's playing on the third line with Cirelli and Alex Killorn. I believe he's still playing on that line. And then, of course, you've got Nick Paul, who was acquired from Ottawa. They gave up Matthew Joseph. There might have been a draft pick there. I'm not sure if it was 1-for-1. But they gave up Matthew Joseph going over to Ottawa. He's playing on the top line with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. How would you say they've fit into the Lightning lineup over the last 3 weeks or so?
Okay, so start with the cost of things. All I can say is they were criticized the last 2 years also. And look where they finished. They won the cup.
Worked out pretty well.
That gets every GM, you know, every GM just has to go, I rest my case, right? And only one team gets to do that every year. So Julian Brisebois batting 1,000 the last couple of years. Yes, you can argue about the draft picks here and there down the road. You guys and I have both seen, you know, hundreds of first-round picks not even come close to being, you know, great players. So the cost is what it is. When you're a top team and you need certain things, the price is different for every team. You know, people will look after the fact and say, well, geez, why didn't our team, you know, make the trade? They didn't have to give up that much for player X. Prices are weird, you know, and every team gets held to a different accountability as far as what it's going to cost him to get any player. They said that about Goodrow and Coleman when the Lightning acquired them right before the 2 cups, and that turned out really nicely. So we get around to Paul, who was traded for Matthew Joseph. Matthew Joseph, great kid. They loved him, loved how he played, great speed, no finish really at all. He showed what he showed, and they needed somebody they thought who had a little bit more size and played physically. And I think from what I've seen of Paul, he's been absolutely terrific. I've been really surprised at how good Nick Paul has looked. Very intelligent, dropped right in and started killing penalties right away. His reads of the game and everything. His speed is better than I ever imagined for a big guy. Like, of the 2 guys, I'd say Nick Paul has done wow for me. As far as Brandon Hagel goes, Brandon Hagel came in with 21 goals, having played with Chicago this year after, being a kid the year before. So a huge jump this year. Got to play with Patrick Kane a lot. And then when he wasn't playing with Kane, he played with Taves once Taves got back playing again. 2 pretty good things. I was actually shocked when I saw he had 21 goals when the Lightning got him. Like, I had no idea he'd been scoring that much. And he's been good, but you can tell he's still trying to, he's got that thing. Like, I think he's putting too much pressure on trying to score goals and be a 21 goal scorer. He's got a couple of goals. He's got 23 now. So that's a really good season. So they're just on him to just relax. We're still trying to test drive some different line combinations here. Just, try to get used to everybody and see where it goes. They did give up some draft picks, and they gave up a couple of guys like Taylor Radish, who I really liked a lot, even more than Kachuk. But those 2 kids, and Taylor Radish said it, and I could really relate to it. He said it was kind of difficult playing in Tampa, which may sound funny. He was intimidated by his own team, and he just never showed, what he could really do. I'd watch him in practice, and Taylor Radish reminded me of Corey Perry a lot. Puck would just jump off his blade, and he just kind of had that slinky thing about him, that Corey Perry has for his whole career. But then when the games came, he never shot the puck. He just was intimidated, like, I got to get back. I got to get the puck to Stammer or to Kucherov or, whomever. So then they trade him. They'd seen enough, a couple of years in the American League, and then, with the team, and they go, okay, that's the level he's at right now. We have a team that's ready to win the cup again. Brandon Hagel got a chance to open his game up on a mediocre to lousy team in Chicago. So his game opened up to 21 goals. So they traded for the guy whose game had opened up already, and maybe Taylor Radish's and Kachuk's game will open up once they play in Chicago for a year or 2. I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's really how I see it.
It's a great answer is what it is.
I was going to say it's an informative answer, which is what we always want here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And then one guy who, 32 years of age, doesn't look like he's stopping anytime short is Steven Stamkos. And, you follow him, you pay attention to what's going on. I looked over at the bold stats, and I was almost shocked, which I shouldn't be given what he's been able to do, but just how good a year he's having. So what is it that's kind of trended in the right direction for Steven Stamkos?
Well, first of all, I hope your hat doesn't catch on fire. Second of all, Steven Stamkos has had a terrific year. For the first time in maybe 4 years, he's had the ability to train in the offseason and not rehab. Big difference. He's had a lot of injuries, and his injuries are never small. They always take a while to overcome. So that's where it started. And even, so you go back to the first of the 2 cups, he only played like a couple of shifts, right? He scored the famous goal. He got about 3 shifts against Dallas, scored a huge goal in the game, which is so Steven Stamkos. But so he didn't play a lot there. Then last year he got to play a lot more. So I'm really glad for him there. And so he's gotten healthier and healthier after a couple of 3 or 4 years of some ugly stuff. He's a great leader. He is a driven player. And now that he has won a couple of cups, I also think there was an ease to his game. That pressure of, you're a great player, Stammer. Maybe you're going to be a Hall of Fame, Stammer, but have you won a Stanley Cup yet? No, you haven't. This is before 2 years ago. Now the engine smooths out a little bit. Now you're in shape. Now you feel confident. Now you don't have that monkey on your back. And he hit the ground running first day of training camp. It was unreal. I looked at he and Victor Hedman, who are the 2 biggest leaders on the team, and they were skating faster and better than anybody else first day of training camp. And I went, now that's great leadership. And they've done the same all season long.
Brian Engblom is our guest on the show, or on our YouTube channel as well, of our social media platforms. Brian, you look at this Lightning team, and they're likely to get the Leafs, as we talked about. I mean, it seems as though that's more than likely to be the case right now. How do they shut down the Leafs offense? We know, that Tampa Bay, isn't intimidated by anyone or anything. Who gets the matchup to shut down the Leafs' top guns, and sort of which top guns do you need to shut down the most when it comes to Toronto for the Lightning to be successful?
Well, for me, it's Austin Matthews. The guy, it's obvious his goal scoring, but it's the fact that he scores them so many different ways. He's a big man. He's 220 pounds, 6'3", and he can fly. He's got change of speed on the rush. He's got some dazzling moves on the rush. He gets his shot blocked so seldom. I see today's game. It is kind of annoys me almost when I watch a lot of forwards. They get so close to the defenseman that they think, do you think these guys are stupid? Yeah, they let you come a certain distance, and then all of a sudden that stick comes out and it gets deflected. And it's like you're constantly amazed that this is happening. Come on. Austin Matthews doesn't do that. I see him get his shots away, and more often than anybody else. He's got an unreal wrist shot, and boy, is it heavy, and he can shoot the lights out, right? But he also goes to the front of the net. He's got a one-timer. He's not just all power play. He's one of those cycle guys. Toronto's big on the cycle. I look, the analytics you can get, most teams by far are cycle teams as compared to, getting their chances as compared to rush. There are only guys like, Connor McDavid and Goudreau in Calgary. Those are the only two of the top, I think, 10 guys, or maybe even more, that have more chances on the rush than they do on the cycle. So that pretty much tells you about the rest of the league. And for Austin Matthews, it's not even close. I mean, he's way, way overloaded on cycle. So it means it's when they get in the zone and they're going. He and Marner get going. They use the defense and whatever. Most teams are like that. And Matthews is a machine. And when you have a guy like Marner, that 1-2 punch, it's one of those combos that's most successful in the league. So for me, it's Matthews. But you can't, have Marner running around all over the place. I would say the Cirelli, probably Palat, Killorn combination would be a matchup, but it's more about defense, right? It's hard with your forwards, and you don't want to Koopa match in the playoffs. He's not big on it in the regular season because he doesn't like to lose the rhythm of a good team that knows how to score, meaning his team. So, but in the playoffs, it's a necessity. But when you have a 1-2 punch of Hedman and McDonough in particular that you can do, and I expect that Chernak will play with McDonough again, and they will see a lot of those guys. So I would see that would be the matchup. But for me, when you play Toronto, if you want to play a skill game, you're going to lose. And I think the Lightning, even the Lightning, will lose. If they don't come out nasty and hit a ton, it's a big job. And you got to be ready. This is going to be a playoff about will over skill for the Lightning, trying to win 3 in a row. Are you ready to unpack all the bags? Are you ready to be absolutely empty and inside out by the time the playoffs are over, which is what their guys have been the last 2 years? Can you do it again? Will you do it again? That's going to be the story, because they know how and they have the tools to do it. But if they play Toronto, they're going to have to be physical from start to finish, be ready to drop the mitts, intimidate those guys a little bit, and then see where it goes from there.
Brian, just listening to your answer there, makes me, just immediately think of, that is right up Corey Perry's alley. And you mentioned Corey Perry earlier, and nobody should be surprised that he's having a good season. But 17 goals, it's like, we've gone back to 2015 or 16 or something like that. And it's unbelievable that you can put out a fourth line of Patrick Maroon, Corey Perry, and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. And obviously, the Leafs have some, depth at the forward position as well. But just how amazing has Corey Perry been this year? Because I think, people would have expected maybe 5 to 10 goals, but 17 goals for a guy that's in your bottom 6 is nothing short of incredible for a guy who, we know is, he's not 25 years old anymore. Neither am I, by the way.
Yeah, neither am I. You know what? At the beginning of the year, I really thought, and I said it on the record, I really thought Corey Perry could score 20 here, because if he could get on the power play and the number one power play, which he has not, and they gave him a look early on, that guy down by the net where Killorn has been for the Lightning, or Palat, because you're not going to replace Stammer or Kuchar Point, so you got to be that other guy down beside the net. But even still, he's so good at the net. Having said that, they gave him a little bit of a look, but he ended up on the second power play unit pretty much all year long. So I thought, okay, still he's got a chance. He went the first 17 games without a goal. And then when he finally scored, he did that, the gorilla off your back, the monkey off your back thing. It was so funny. He was feeling it big time. He had never gone that long in his entire career. So he starts off on a new team with no goals in 17 games for a guy who's really proud and really intense. He was in all the areas that he usually goes to. The puck would not go in the net. So then, since then, he's gotten his 16 goals, 17 goals, whatever it is. Am I surprised? Not really. He's still one of the best screeners in the league. He screened in the last game against Anaheim to allow Kucherov to score the goal with 26 seconds or whatever it was to go to tie the game up. And then the Lightning won in overtime. That was purely because, the goaltender couldn't see the puck. So he's really valuable in all those areas. Also, it was really interesting. What I noticed, even on the first road trip on the plane, we were traveling with the team early on, and he very outgoing. He'd get up and he'd go and stand and lean over the back of the chairs and talk to the Russians and, whatever they were talking about, whatever they were looking at. Then he'd go and, stand over and watch the card game and see who's playing cards and all that. Then he'd wander up to the front of the plane where a lot of the young guys sit. He'd go talk to them and then he'd come back. I thought that's a great thing right there. And then Coop and the players have said all season long, Corey Perry says the right things in the room. I mean, he doesn't mess around. When he puts the stuff on at night, he is wired. And he is nasty to play against like he always has been. Ryan Getzlaf was in here last game, and, of course, they're the best of friends, right? And we talked to Getzy in the morning, and he said, you know what? I had more fights in my career because of stuff that Corey Perry started than anything I started. And that's pretty much the epitome of Corey Perry.
Brian, just, pivoting away from the Tampa Bay Lightning on a sad note, obviously, Mike Bossy passed away earlier yesterday or a couple of days ago. And, the years that he played in the NHL were very similar to the years that you played in the NHL for the Montreal Canadiens and other teams. And we just wanted to ask you, some of the memories that stand out for Mike Bossy. My dad always said this, he's a few years older than you, but he always said, Mike Bossy, one of the greatest pure goal scorers of all time. If he was healthy, he probably would have, had maybe the record highest goals per game in NHL history, by the way, him and Mario Lemieux, higher than Gretzky, higher than Ovechkin. So obviously very sad news. And, what stands out to you about, playing against Mike Bossy and Mike Bossy as a person?
I agree with your dad. I've been saying ever since Mike Bossy retired that had he been able to play 20 years like Gretz did, that he would have rivaled Gretz for the all-time goals scored. He was that good. He doesn't get talked about in that vein often enough because he only played 10 years only. And the last year, his back was so bad he could barely function. So he scores 50 goals, I think 9 times, ties Gretzky. 53 goals. I don't know if you guys saw that flashback they showed, whatever network I saw it on. And they were talking to the members of the Islanders and about his rookie year when he was first signed. He was a medium first round pick. So they saw the potential. But he said, I'm going to score 50 goals. Yeah. And they went, well, you got to make the team first, kid. And he scored 53 goals his first year. For me, he was, as I said, I thought he'd rival Gretz. There are so many times I covered him in front of the net, and then Trache or Gillies would be in the corner. They get the puck or behind the net, and you'd have him for a second. You'd have his stick, and then he'd back away a step and a half, put his stick down. And by the time you realize that the puck was already off his stick and going the other direction, and you'd stand there and go, I had him. I had him, but you didn't have him. But he could score anyway on the rush, a big time half slapper, heavy shot. And he had all the different kinds of deliveries, virtually never missed the net. And I remember he used to say that he would shoot for the middle of the net often and say, well, if I miss by a little bit, it's right in the corner. But he was deadly at 5-hole, deadly 5-hole shooter. But the odds were just great. I remember Luc Robitaille coming in and saying, I was a huge Mike Bossy fan. And I remember him saying, I always shot for the middle of the net. So Luc said, I did the same thing. And Luc scored, 630 goals? It's a pretty good process. So he was a fantastic player. I don't know if you guys read the letter, the letter to my younger self. Might have been on The Athletic or something. Wasn't that fantastic?
Players Tribune,
About
I think, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I think it was. Yeah.
The intimidation factor that he felt even in junior hockey, because how crazy it was in our day. Guys are trying to take your head off and you're getting punched in the head all the time. And you're Mike Bossy and one of the most talented guys ever to play the game. And you could tell the fear, just writing about it all those years later about having to face that. Players today don't have to face that, and good for them. There isn't that fear factor at all. I don't care what anybody says. It was crazy. It was ridiculous. And that's what Mike was referring to. But to play through that and still score 50 and 50 and 60 and 60 all the time, his even his junior career, he was scared. He mentioned that in that article. He was scoring 75 goals. I think he had over 80 one year. Ridiculous to overcome that and have that confidence and this almost survival mode in order to go through all that. I can't say enough about Mike. I only got to play with him once for a short time, the Canada Cup in 81. Terrific person, just like everybody's been saying. He's sorely missed.
That was beautiful, Brian. Well said, well spoken as always. And, we always appreciate your time and your insight, both on Mike Bossy, as the case may be, and of course about the Tampa Bay Lightning set for, which should be, hopefully from your perspective, undoubtedly, a lengthy playoff run as they try and become even more of a dynasty, potentially with 3 in a row. Just, what does 3 in a row do to a team? We've seen 2 in a row lately, but the NHL is designed to not have the same cup winner 3 years in a row. What does that do to the dynamic if they're able to pull off the trio of wins?
Well, Coop's pretty good at, setting the table. He's a very dynamic coach. He's very well-spoken. He's a very smart guy. And I think he's proven that the last couple of years as a head coach. Mm-hmm. And his theme at the beginning of this year was, do you want to be special? Mm-hmm. And, that is a really good way to start it. So in other words, do you want to be like the New York Islanders? They were the last team to do it, did 4 in a row. So that really set the table. And he'll be reinforcing that, I'm sure, when it comes, when the playoffs start here in a couple of weeks. I think that it is extremely special. Like even the Chicago teams that we've seen recently couldn't quite do the 3 in a row. The LA teams that won a couple, in a short space. 3 in a row is really different. I mean, 2 is tough as hell. But as I said a few moments ago, it's probably more will over skill. You really have to. I've always used the term because I remember it from the Larry Robinsons and Savards and Gainey's and Lafleur's and Schutz and those guys, that after we had won the cups, those guys were inside out. There was nothing left. They were inside out. And so that's the best way I can describe it, what it takes, especially for your star guys, your core. You have to be inside out or you're not going to win. And then the other guys have to follow suit shortly, closely behind. So are you willing to do that? Can you do that? Because there's no better feeling. So the Lightning had 3 years ago, they lost 4 straight after a fabulous regular season, 4 straight. So you win. You learn from losing, for sure. We always say that. You learn from losing. That's a horrible feeling. You never want to feel that again. That was the worst. The players just wanted to run away and hide all summer. But you also learn from the winning. So they've learned from the winning the last 2 years. So which feeling do you want? I mean, I think that'd be, if I was Cooper, I'd be going, you remember that Columbus thing? Just for a second. Remember how badly that hurt? And then remember these last 2 years where when the final siren went, and for the next couple of days and weeks and months and the boat parades, how good that felt. But how you feel when you sit down in the locker room and you're taking your stuff off right immediately after winning. There is no feeling like that in the world. And that is the best. So to recreate that, the price is you got to be inside out. And we'll see if they are.
Brian Engblom is an analyst on Tampa Bay Lightning broadcast. He's a good friend of ours. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Have a good call on tonight's game. We'll do it again real soon.
Anytime, guys. Be careful of blizzards and fires.
Exactly. We got it both hot and cold here. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Be well.
Be well.
Thanks, man.
Brian Engblom joining us on the program this Saturday morning. What a great guy Brian is. boy, he was fun when he was doing the Jets broadcast back in what was that, year 1, year 2, something like that, when he was
he was a
early
treat.
on. Yeah,
He was a
and then
treat.
I think he made the right choice in going to the Tampa Bay Lightning broadcast. I do think that. I think life is a little bit easier in Tampa, and he deserves
Yeah,
it.
you can never take the Winnipeg out of a Winnipegger.
You can't take the Winnipeg out of a Winnipegger. That's true. And
Brian sounded like he was clamoring for some snow.
I don't think he was clamoring too hard, but just great.
I think we definitely miss, bugging Brian at the Grove. We used to, have a few bevies after Jets games, but yeah, I think he's enjoying that Tampa Bay sun for sure.
Exactly, and it's a much different season when you're the Tampa Bay Lightning this year than when you're the Winnipeg Jets, and it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight as the Lightning are really just focused on sort of fine tuning their operations ahead of the playoffs, which will begin in a little more than 2 weeks' time, whereas the Jets are fine tuning their golf swings, which will begin in a little more than 2 weeks' time. How about that barn burner of a game? That Kraken Jets game is going to be on Sunday, May 1st. Boy, that's going to be a riveting battle, isn't it? Just painful to watch to end the season on that. But I guess we got a couple weeks.
Everybody should get free pancakes as they walk into the arena for that game.
Why? Everybody will just take their pancakes and leave. They'll turn around, they'll throw the pancakes on the ice. That's going to be a doozy. But much like today's show was a doozy. Gentlemen, always good to catch up with both of you. It's been a while. Nice to see you both. Big thanks to everybody for joining us on the program. Final thoughts from both of you before we wrap up today.
Well, first off, it's great to have the three of us back together. You guys got to, go to hotter locales, whereas I just kept it real here in Winnipeg. I mean, I don't sell out like you guys. So, I mean, just, nice to have the triumvirate back together, the boys back together. But yeah, I mean, just looking for, what the Jets can muster up after, last night's stinker in Sunrise, because you're going up against a Tampa Bay Lightning team. I mean, they still want to win this game for seeding, right? They have a chance to still finish second. They're not obviously going to catch the Florida Panthers for the division title, but it'll be interesting to see whether, they go back to Connor Hellebuck, who obviously was pulled in favor of Eric Comrie, or if, Comrie gets a rare start here. So we'll see, how the Jets are going to respond here, against the Lightning. We know they're going to be a little bit tired here. And as we mentioned before, I mean, these last 6 games, I mean, even though you have 0.1% chance, I mean, the Jets are not going to be a playoff team. So, I'm just looking forward to, seeing, kind of what direction they go in, which guys they call up from the Moose. We talked about it during the first hour of the show. Could you see, a Leon Gavanke get the call up, or, could you see, David Gustafson, back up with the Jets? We'll see. But, yeah, we'll be back here in, what is it, Drew, 8 or 9 hours to do the post-game show. And, we're back, baby.
There you go. Something like that. Dave M., final thought to you.
Well, in addition to 2 Moose games this weekend, we won't be seeing them, but 2 Jets draft picks, of course, were signed to their ELCs. We've got Henry Nikkinen, the 2019 4th rounder, and Daniel Torgerson, the 2020 2nd rounder. Now, Nikkinen is a player that we've seen here in Winnipeg before. He was here for a development camp. He actually was selected, if you remember, by the Ice in the European draft. So there was a potential he would have come here instead of playing in Liga last year. Of course, he stayed over in Finland. They're not going to play right away, but it sounds like they're already being welcomed into the Moose Club, and Ville Heinola was asked. He knows Nikkinen. They played on the national team together, and so there'll be some familiarity there. I talked to David Gustafson. He didn't really know Daniel Torgerson. He's a few years older, and I guess Torgerson was dealing, of course, with some injuries, so they didn't get a chance to really play against each other or play with each other on national teams. But there's a big Finnish and a big Swedish contingent. Christian Vesalainen is he can play both roles. He's Finnish, speaks Swedish, so we'll see. But it'll be good to see those guys, in and around the team practicing. They're on PTOs with the Moose, so they'll get a chance to probably play in some games later in the probably not this homestand, like I said, against Rockford. The team goes out to Rockford. my guess is they'll probably give them a shot in that Milwaukee game. I think it's on the 24th. Or 23rd. So yeah, lots of Moose stuff to come. Make sure you keep it locked. LegalCurve.com. I will have a Moose recap after today's game and after tomorrow's game.
Dave, when is Mikey Malot's next UFC fight? Do we know yet?
We do not. But I do know, because I talked to Jeff Malott about that on Monday, that folks, just to quickly wrap it up, I admitted to Jeff I'm not a UFC guy, but I thought it was pretty cool what his brother did, because he, they don't make a lot of money when you're a low paid fighter in UFC. And he donated, I think, $10,000 because his coach's daughter is dealing with she has a form of cancer. So Mike Malott donated his winnings to to his his coach's daughter. And the craziest thing is, I don't know.
Dana White actually covered it, Dave.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. So I asked Jeff about that because at the time, like a guy like Jake Paul, who's a fighter. He had given and a YouTuber, I think. He had given donated some money, and then also the fans were giving him a huge chunk. He was doing his post-fight presser, and he had like an envelope full of money from people donating. And then Jeff told me that Dana White came out and admitted that he was going to let Mike keep his money and make the donation on their behalf. So good on UFC because it's good PR from them and a really good, sad story, but money going to a good cause. So lots going on, lots of good vibes coming from the Manitoba Moose. Winnipeg Ice, they're playing, I think, their final regular season game. They start their playoffs next week. So there is going to be playoff hockey here in Manitoba, plenty to watch. So you're going to have the Ice, you're going to have the Moose. We'll be covering it. You're going to have your Ice chips coming out on Monday on illegalcurve.com. That's courtesy of Jake Maurice. So lots of coverage still, even if the Jets go away, folks. And we'll have lots of Jet stuff still to do. You're still going to have lots of Moose, still going to have some Ice, and you're going to still have the three of us in some capacity.
And that's all you can ask for on a Saturday morning and after each and every Winnipeg Jets game. Want to say a big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve. They make the post-game show, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Bernstein's Deli, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagroves, Rolly's Transfer, and Grid Park support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Ezzy and I will be back later on tonight for the post game after the Jets and the Lightning. Dave M will be taking the night off. Why are you pointing at yourself? Do you have something you want to say?
Quick shout out to Sammy K Plays, one of our youngest YouTube subscribers. So Sammy K Plays, shout out for watching the Illegal. I just got a text. He's watching the Illegal Curve hockey show. So we appreciate the support from everyone who watches our show and participates.
Both young and old, they come to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us some comments.
The young and the restless, Drew.
that too, Mr. Ginsburg, that too. Until later on tonight, we say thanks for watching. Enjoy your Saturday. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.